We've got a lot of anchored ships.
I've just been looking at the weather radar, and it's a very big storm.
Very big containers all the way around. We've got shipping lanes both way in front of us.
Yeah, it's horrible. It looks really horrible.
A few wrecks, quite a few rocks and islands. We've also got a lot of storms all the way around us.
It's coming across from the west, and we're going right into the middle of it.
Leaving Tioman, perhaps a little earlier than we had originally anticipated. It's been more of a pit stop, get lots of laundry done, check in, check out. We didn't need diesel because we're doing quite well on diesel, but the reason we're having to go a little earlier is because there's quite a big system coming through Vietnam, across Cambodia, into the northern part of the Gulf of Thailand, and the result of that is there's a lot of wind coming round, and it's going to be coming round, it's going to be hitting this area. There isn't much shelter between here and Singapore along the coast there, so we're going to do 2 stops. We're going to go to Tinghi and then probably Jason's Bay and then round to Singapore. We can do it in the next 2 or 3 days, but we're going to keep a very careful eye on the weather and just see what's happening there. At the moment the timing is quite good. Although we haven't got great wind in our favour, the most important thing is we haven't got wind and waves against us, so at least if we have to motor it will be not too unpleasant. Let's hope. It's been motoring the whole way. It's been flat. I haven't seen a single animal. I have seen some turns. Hasn't rained. It's been very hot, and I've just been on watch the whole time.
As Liz said earlier, slightly uneventful journey across, and she has been doing the watch all the way because I've been editing down below. Perfect conditions for it because it's flat calm with no wind. To be honest, it's preferable at the moment, what with this changing weather that's happening. We have noticed behind us back in the north, there appears to be clouds forming. Could be the beginning of that front that we are trying to run away from, not sure. There has been thunder happening over to the west over there, which is kind of normal. We've been getting that most days actually. We were going to go to Tinghi, which is behind us, but since we've already been there, we thought we'd come to another island just opposite called Sibu. Now, we had been told previously that it can be a bit rocky and rolly, but because we are now in the transitional, we're hoping that, fingers crossed, that it should be pretty calm. As you can see, the sea state is absolutely flat. but we'll wait and see what happens when we go over there. There is a little anchorage there, just go and have a look, and just spend the night there before pushing off further south whilst we continue to run away from this that's building behind us. These are sadly the last South China Sea islands that we are going to see for a while, because we are now heading back down the east coast of Malaysia to get around the corner. And behind me you can see it looks rather lovely, doesn't it? Blue skies, fluffy clouds, but slightly deceptive because we have this big front moving across from Cambodia across into the Gulf of Thailand. It's going to be bringing some pretty strong northerlies, and with that, of course, the sea state is going to pick up. Now, we were at anchor last night and it was a little bit choppy, let's say, but pointing into the waves, it's actually quite comfortable, so it wasn't too bad. But it's not going to improve at all, it's only going to get worse. So much as we would love to stay and explore these little islands, and of course we could always stay on the lee side of them, but unfortunately that's the west side, and as you saw last night we had some horrendous storms coming through, so it is time to push on, unfortunately. So we tried to get the sails out, and despite the rolling sea, as you can see the boat's barreling at the moment, there isn't much wind, so we're having to motor sail again. But next stop, Jason's Bay, 20 miles away. Not entirely sure what the sea state's going to be like because it is open to the east, so we'll find out when we get there. And just literally one night before then pushing on around the corner of Johor. Well, we came, we saw, and then we sailed off. Tried to get to Jason's Bay. If you remember, Jason's Bay is the bay that gives us a bit of protection from the south east when we came up this way by tucking into that corner down there. So we thought the opposite might be applicable from the northeast at the top end of Jason's Bay. Unfortunately, there's rocks, and then it gets very shallow. There's a couple of wrecks, and there's no real data other than to tell us that it goes down to 1.5 meters, which of course is no good for us. So we pushed it as far as 4.5 meters, and as it got more shallow we decided no. Anyway, we've got a bit of a swell, but we also have wind, which is good. So engine off, sails are out, which is nice, and we're doing what, over 5.5 knots, I think, about 5.5 knots, which is great. As you can see though behind me, the weather is building, and this is part of the course, westerlies of course, so let's hope that we can move more quickly that way than that does this way. As for where we anchor at the end, no idea what we're going to do. We will, if we continue to go around the corner, we'll end up doing it in the dark. Remember, that's where all the shipping comes out from the Singapore Strait, so that could be very busy. The other option is just to drop the hook and just put up with the big swell that we've got at the moment, so that's always an option as well. So we'll take stock in another few hours and see what happens. One minute sailing, now we've lost all the wind, and you can see behind me, I've just been looking at the weather radar, and it's a very big storm. It's coming across from the west, and we're going right into the middle of it, and it stretches from there to there, and yeah, it's horrible. It looks really horrible. So sails away because there's no wind, and waterproofs out, spray head up. I mean, look how dark it's getting. Just look at that. That's horrible. And we've got another one happening over there as well. Look. It's moving very quickly now. Doing 30 knots. 30. We've got the mizzen, staysail, So we're just doing not many knots, 3 knots. Wind is 24, from that 24.
Line 2, coming from south, crossing to north, over.
And we're coming to the bottom of the peninsula of Malaysia, which means we go around the corner. We're going south and then we're going to be going west on our way to the east side of Singapore. And we've got a lot of anchored ships, very big containers all the way around. We've got shipping lanes both way in front of us. We've got a few wrecks, quite a few rocks and islands over this side. And last time when we came through, we went through that way, we went through the rocks, but we just want a little bit of manoeuvrability this time in case the proverbial hits the fan, because we've also got a lot of storms all the way around us. So just waiting to see what happens. We've got AIS on, everything, binoculars, everything. We're just gonna suck it and see.
Motor vessel BBC call, quarter 3, Korea, motor vessel BBC, Korea Koski, CCTV found the calling.
We're in Johor, which is the southeast corner of Malaysia. If you remember when we last came round, we have Singapore right behind us. The original plan was to go up this river and to stay at Sebana Cove marina. But because of the weather, we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule. So we've decided we are going to go back round onto the west coast. But before we do that, we have to get fuel. Now, according to Navionics, there is a fuel depot somewhere up this river. This is the river on the way to Sebana Cove. So we have a whole load of, and I've got to keep an eye out for these, a whole load of anchored big bastard boats up there. And quite a narrow, well, sorry, a shallow channel, I should say, with very shallow patches either side. So we just need to get past here. I've absolutely no idea what the deal is, but there is a telephone number. So if we get stuck, I'll give the guy a call. We just want to make sure we've got enough fuel that will get us round, and the plan is to go up to back up to Port Dickson, which is a good 150 miles away. So we probably carry enough fuel as it is, but always like to keep the tanks topped up and have some spare in case of an emergency.
Sitting in a river waiting for Jamie. He's gone off to the fuel barge because we just think it's going to be too difficult to tie up. There's a number of boats around there, too difficult to tie up and take the fuel directly on board. So he's taken all our jerry cans over in the dinghy. He'll bring them back and we'll put the diesel into the tank. We should have enough easily to get us to Port Dickson, but we just like to keep those tanks full. So this is the glamorous side of cruising and yachting, sitting around next to fuel barges in rivers, waiting to fill up with diesel. Love it.
An update for you. We have been sitting here in Johor for, I've actually lost count of the amount of days here. We've been lying low The reason for that is that we want to get Liz up into a marina, Port Dickson actually, on the west coast, but they're full. Since there is nowhere to anchor in between here and there, we thought we'd sit out here where it's much calmer and protected. Unfortunately, if you remember, we looked at our water maker and gave it a clean because the water was tasting briny. The problem wasn't that it was dirty. We actually found a split in the end cap on the end of one of the membranes. Now this is normal wear and tear. We've not actually replaced them in the 8 or 9 years we've had the water maker, so it's to be expected. But the problem is that we can't actually make drinking water anymore. We are running out of water. Also, with all the editing, we are using a lot of battery power, and as you can probably see behind me, it's very cloudy. We haven't had sun now for well over a week, if not more. So anyway, to cut a long story short, we're going to nip up to Sebana Cove Marina, which was originally our plan anyway. That's where we were going to leave Liz when I nipped back to the UK. And so we're going to go up there today, up the river, just spend a couple of days there, fill up the water tanks, do a bit of shopping, top up on phone credit, just all the usual stuff you don't need to know about. But that's what we're going to do. Well, as you can see in this week's episode, we got absolutely drenched in that squall. And you can see that despite having that canvas work, it didn't offer any protection. And this is one of the reasons why we are building a hard dodger on Esper, to protect us from those elements. When we crossed the Indian Ocean a few years ago, we had similar weather and we were wet all the way through.
Oh, it was so uncomfortable, it was horrible. Never again.
Yes. So you can also see in this week's episode that we actually covered a lot of miles, and that was because we were trying to run away from this front that was coming in. So we weren't able to stop off at various places. And in a recent episode we talked about why you should buy a boat, and we said that freedom was the main reason for it, and someone correctly pointed out that that's all very well, but you are still at the mercy of the weather. Very true. Which brings us on to another comment. Someone has asked for a special on our passage planning and to go in a bit more detail. So what do you reckon, Liz?
Yeah, we're going to do that. We're putting it together right now. It should be coming out fairly soon, so keep watching. Yeah, so when you're planning a passage as long as the one that we're doing from next year, there's an awful lot of planning that has to go on, and you have to think about all the weather systems that are around the globe. Over here we have a northeast monsoon and the southwest monsoon, so you've got to get it right. So those will demand when you start. You then got currents and all kinds of things going on in the Pacific Ocean, and you have a very big typhoon area off the coast of Japan, which means we have to leave Japan at a certain time, so we need to get to Japan by a certain time. We also can only leave the east coast of Malaysia at a certain time. So all of these things need to be factored in, and I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail to explain it. The other thing we have to think about, of course, is the political situation, and also we have piracy at the moment in the southern Philippines. So we're watching that, monitoring it all the time, because that will dictate the way we get to Japan and which way we go through the Philippines. All of these factors need to be taken into consideration, and at any time we need to be ready in our passage to make changes, because something may occur that we weren't expecting. So when it comes to the typhoons, tiny little window in Japan, isn't there?
Yeah, and we were talking about it the other day, and it's the difference between the window, of being in Japan for 2 months or 14 months,
Yeah.
because there is no in-between bit, is there?
Yeah, there isn't. So if we get there early enough, we'll get a good 2, perhaps 3 months in Japan before we set off. Won't be able to set off until the typhoon systems are looking as good as they can be. But if we're stuck there for over a year, it would be lovely to see Japan, but not quite so good for Millie. She's allowed into the country as long as she stays on the boat. She doesn't have to go through quarantine, but 14 months without, and keeping her on the boat for 14 months is just not really fair. So we'd have to look at perhaps visiting some other places or doing some changes. We don't know yet.
Yeah, well anyway, it should be an interesting video, especially
Yeah.
to those that are interested in how you break down such a large passage.
And it will explain why we're not going until next year, because that is the first opportunity.
Yep. Okay, well I hope you liked the video. Don't forget to click that like button and do share it. And lots of you still haven't subscribed, so please do subscribe to our channel.
And with that, we'll say peace and fair winds.